This is 70 years ago, so more than that. All I can tell you, these are my recollections. In my early days, we were very poor. We moved around a lot. I remember going into Donaldsonville. There were no cars around because there weren't any roads. You couldn't go half a mile on a road with a car without it getting stuck in the mud. We used to go into town on a flatbed wagon with two mules. You know, you were given credit at the country store. In this case, the country store was Lemon Brothers in Donaldsonville, which is where we went to buy things. Well, I came to New Orleans when I was 7 to go to school. I think it was of necessity. I mean, I don't know. There was no work out in the country. Anyway, we moved into New Orleans. My recollection is that this was to go to school, but I think there were economic reasons for doing so also. Because this was a depression and things were rough. We couldn't survive in the country anymore, I guess. At some point, and I don't remember exactly when, my grandfather died and we moved around the corner to Magazine Street until the tragedy occurred. I was then in high school at Fort J. That whole situation had a devastating effect on all of us, I think. In those days, the New Orleans Art School, which is part of the Arts and Crafts Club, gave scholarships to so-called talented students, and I was offered a scholarship, and I accepted it. I'd always drawn, really. I remember the first time I took the streetcar down and went into the French Quarter, I thought, my God, you know, this is something. The streetcar named Desire, there were streetcars in the French Quarter. All the corner lights were gas lit. It was a marvelous place. I was absolutely intrigued by it. I met exotic people like Paul Ninas and Ricky Alvarez. Real artists, you know. We had nude models, which was that was quite something. The Arts and Crafts Club was then, well, it was where modern art was shown in the French Quarter. I mean, it was the only place of its kind around. The word in those days was bohemian. I was a bohemian. We all were bohemians. By that time, I think I was working at the Gresham Gallery, which was on Royal Street, in what later became WDSU. I worked in the frame shop, and that's where I first met Hazel. And I met a young woman named Marjorie Fisher. And Charlie Gresham, who ran Gresham Gallery, said to me one afternoon, "Why don't you all get married? I'll arrange it all." So I got a job at Higgins plant out in City Park. They were building PT boats and landing craft. I went in the service. See, at that point, the Air Force was part of the Army. It was the U.S. Army Air Force. Anyway, I went into basic training in Fort Livingston in North Louisiana. I came back to New Orleans. The Arts and Crafts Club was still in existence then. Anyway, I ended up running it as executive secretary and ran the school, which was on the second floor. I lived on the top floor. This is on corner of Pirates Alley and Royal. I was making the big sum of $100 a month running the Arts and Crafts Club. You know, I was living on the top floor, and people were aware of the fact that I was living in sin. And Litsa, she was sort of a dancer. She also modeled. She was a good model. We got married. My benefactor in the gallery then was Nancy Rathburn. She was a great lady, extremely wealthy. And she took on the Arts and Crafts Club sort of as a, I don't know, as a hobby, I guess. Nancy Rathburn. That photograph was taken on the occasion when we went out in the country photographing in the Jeep. That photograph was taken, I think, out in the cemetery outside of Thibodeau. Yeah, you knew the masks. For I'd love to forget them. It started with Murray. Murray was a good friend of Tom Kapling, who owned and ran Café Lafitte. Through Tom, I met Murray, and Murray wanted to make masks. It wasn't something that really interested me. And I was running the Arts and Crafts Club, doing masks and such, painting sets for Spangenberg. That we still did that in the last days of New Orleans Art School. There was a very nice guy named Buford Pickens. What had happened was the School of Architecture, it had lost its accreditation. It was a sort of poor stepchild of the School of Engineering. Pickens was brought down as dean. He said, we've got to teach these kids how to draw. I mean, you know, the slide rule thing and the T-square is fine, but they have no sense of form. I went up and taught part-time in the School of Architecture. And it so evolved. By the time Pickens left and went to St. Louis, I was very much a part of the faculty. When I was in the School of Architecture, it was very supportive, I thought. I mean, particularly when Pickens was there. When I did that portrait of Lynn and Shirley Brazelman, I did that in the School of Architecture. I had a studio in the school. While we had the workshop in architecture, I did a whole series of large panels with very soft, sort of floating forms. Well, the masonite was very hard, you know, very smooth surface, and so you could work very thinly and very lightly on it. You know, I don't think any artist that's worth his salt sits down and says, well, now let me see, I'm going to do a Rothko, or I'm going to, I mean, if one is influenced, I think it's subconsciously so. I think she took classes at Newcomb. She had a great and unusual transition from the University of Chicago to Newcomb College, from the source of avant-garde education to Southern belles at Newcomb. She was then married to Frank Lossy. They lived in the French Quarter. They used to come to the night drawing classes in the art school. And eventually they separated, and it's been a marvelous and fortunate relationship ever since. So why did you choose that subject? Well, my first answer is, I don't know. I don't consciously choose a subject. And second is that subject is paint. I think the greatest painter of the 20th century really is Bonnard. In a way, is a very conservative painter. I mean, he paints domestic life that he knew around him. But you look at his work and you never forget it's paint. I was very strong in the integrity of the medium, whether it's whatever it is, paint, sculpture. I like to work with the surface, not work on it. I've always been interested in three-dimensional design, and of course I did a series of fountains. I don't remember how I got into the fountain business. Teaching in the School of Architecture and teaching students in three-dimensional design was very great impetus in doing sculpture. You know, of recent years, since we've been spending more and more time up here, I've done a number of things related to the environment or the landscape. I'm not a regionalist. I don't think geography has a part in it. My thinking is. Quality of the space, the quality of the light, the quality of the forms that are there. Well, I don't think of them as not being realistic. On the other hand, they have their own realism. I'm a painter. My ideal routine is to get up in the morning, take a walk, have breakfast in the shower, and go to work. I never finish anything because I think once it has that finished look, it's too late. And I always sort of think of it in terms of it's like walking up a hill. I want to just get a hint of what's on the. I don't want to get to the top. I just want to have a slightest hint of what's there, and then stop. Because once you get to the top, you're going down, and it's too late. It's very important to me anyway to know when to stop working on something. How do you know when the work is finished? It's intuitive. You just know, leave it alone.